Hi traders, very interesting day today. I want to go through some important learning points and in particular how to take advantage of these sort of markets. So remember, the first thing is if you haven't gone through our macro fundamental course, please do make sure you go through it. Look at our risk events trading strategy and a lot of the tools that we use here, the economic calendar, the news squawk and the news feed, the implied volatility levels. We're all going to be using those tools in relation to the macro fundamentals. So today is a really helpful day because as we go into the session, right, what we're going to notice is what do you do when you really don't have a lot of clear drivers. So for example, right, the market is waiting for some big name earnings to come up, right? See, APAC stocks, Wall Street, but with some of the gains capped ahead of key events and big tech earnings stateside. So we have on Wednesday, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, ASML, right? Tesla, very big tech names all coming out, right? Wednesday and Thursday. Now, if you look at the weightings for NASDAQ 100, look, Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, they have a disproportionate weighting in the index. So you see the earnings of those companies will impact the NASDAQ much more strongly, right, than say a smaller company like Adobe, right, or Gilead. The impact of Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, Apple is going to be strong. And you can look at the weighting here, same for the S&P 500. Look, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Tesla, again, heavy weighting the S&P 500. For the Dow, Microsoft, Apple, right? So all those major three indices are heavily influenced by the earnings of just a few companies. So the markets are not going to be wanting to take on, big positions ahead of that. And on top of that, if you look at the interest rate expectations, we've got the Federal Reserve meeting tomorrow as well. So you see, in this kind of environment, markets don't want to take big positions. They don't want to be holding positions necessarily into these risk events. And so markets become a lot more tentative. But it doesn't mean there isn't opportunity. And I had to record this video after we just did our session, right? But I was showing, look, there's a few opportunities here. So first of all, euro dollar, right? The dollar could easily retrace now after the weakness we've seen on geopolitical issues, the talk of intervention between the Bank of Japan and the Federal Reserve potentially being coordinated, the sort of sell America story, that dollar weakness narrative, right, is quite stretched now. So what I'm looking for here is if the euro dollar can go through that 1.169 region, I've got a 4-point stop here. So if I go back down here, I'm going to 4-point stop, seeing if I can ride some a retracement in the dollar into the Federal Reserve meeting, right? That's what I'm looking at doing. So I've got a short there, right? Only try up to 3 times, only 4 or 5-point stop. Second trade is the dollar yen short. Now, unfortunately, I have to re-record this video, but this happened during the session.
ECB's quota is just about to start on Bloomberg TV.
Looking for a 4-point stop at this 15438, and I got like a 15-20 to 1 risk reward just as it broke down through there. Now that was a bit of fortune with news of a nuclear explosion. Where is it? Here, you can see it. Just as I was recording running the live session, you can see here immediate strength came in the yen, right? There was no necessary obvious catalyst, but there was some explosion heard near Iran's Parchin nuclear site, right? That may have been related to the yen strength, right? Now, it was just seen as a non-event.
Usual comments from ECB's quota, just noting that a lot has happened since the last ECB meeting in December.
Okay. However, we got triggered in, and just calling this live at the time, you know, potential 28.30 risk reward. You see, that's all on a day when there isn't anything obvious to go for. Now, gold, again, it's continuing to break out. There is a potential, it's a higher risk, but there's a potential to go long here from the 5119, right?
Coach also notes that it is important to keep full optionality.
Just to see if you get a little bit more gold upside. Gold has been relentlessly bid. I'm starting to look for potential retracement building here in the dollar Swiss franc. You can see from last night, there was a nice kind of false rejection of this level here. So that false rejection of the level, a little bit of dollar weakness, and the dollar's being bid each time. So pullback, bid, bid. So there's potential for this to move higher. If it does move higher, right, kind of an obvious area to be looking at longs would be this, right? Break above those highs, have a $5 stop, right? Hit 20 points profit, take profit, and move the rest to break even. So that's definitely something to be keeping an eye on. Okay. As we
and a bit more
forward.
Here from ECB's coach, noting that sentiment indicators slightly biased upwards, noting that the ECB must be able to act quickly and decisively.
Outlook, and that's what to do when you have a day that is not very clear. Okay, very, very easy trades, tiny risk, but you're not having to worry about these big macro narratives. But
meanwhile, over in the metals complex, just keep an eye on spot gold. So it is just testing 5100 to the upside once again. So it has been hovering around that level throughout the whole of the European morning. You can just keep an eye on 5100 to the upside for spot gold.
When you can know what sort of trade outlook is appropriate. Okay, folks, I hope that helps. And as I said, I've had to re-record this because my recording software didn't work for the original. But that's exactly what I've covered. The only extra thing I covered in the session was United Health. It's got a very nice seasonal pattern coming up to some earnings for the company, and you can see that strong earnings. Right, 86% winning trade percentage.
And in terms of geopolitics, South Korea's National Security Office has urged North Korea to immediately halt ballistic missile launches, according to Yonhap. And it does follow the projectiles fired earlier from North Korea.
And I'm looking to see if I get some kind of like retracement, some kind of price action signal.
And a bit more here from ECB's coach, noting that the ECB sees modest growth for the Eurozone. German stimulus and savings rate support growth forecast.